I can say I gave it up everything I had. I mean, every week, So, and maybe it means an interception on 4th and 18 when you're down 10, because I don't care that it's going to say 2 interceptions. I really don't. It's just like I ain't quitting. So I think that doing it with so many guys over 14 years and going to the locker room, win or lose, and I can say, dadgummit, we're short. We fell short, or we won. But shoot, I couldn't try it any harder. So I think 2 different kind of elements there, but I think that's the 2 things that come to my mind. Ralph, man.
All right, thanks, man.
All right, guys.
Phillip Rivers, after his final game with the Chargers, he knew it at the time, and I think the rest of us did too. Peter King, this is not the biggest domino to fall in the 2020 offseason. He wears number 12 for now with the New England Patriots, but it's the first real domino. We expected it, but there was some I don't know, just a little bit of a surprise, a little bit of reality setting in yesterday when the Chargers and Phillip Rivers jointly announced that Rivers, who's already moved out of California back to Alabama, Rivers will not be back with the Chargers in 2020. He'll move on. They'll move on. And it felt inevitable, but there's something sad about a run that began back in 2004 for player and team coming to an end.
Mike, I think the difference is that Tom Brady was scheduled to be a free agent since the beginning of last season. So we knew that. And although half of the free world still believes absolutely categorically there's no way he won't re-sign with the Patriots, which I think you and I disagree with, we didn't know about Phillip Rivers. It seemed like at the end of the season, it was heading in this direction, but there was no guarantee. And, to me, I think the sad part of this is that, I think Phillip Rivers was a gallant, incredibly good competitor. And, people are always going to say, he never won a Super Bowl, which is true. There's a lot of quarterbacks who never won a Super Bowl. Ted Williams never won a World Series. Karl Malone never won an NBA championship. That's the way life goes. The best players at their position don't always win titles. And I think Phillip Rivers was clearly among the best players at his position. You count on him every single week. And look, the last 2 or 3 years, he threw too many interceptions. We all saw it. But I think that, and as far as the Hall of Fameness of him, there will be time for that. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer. I don't know if Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer. But to me, if I'm thinking of Phillip Rivers, I'm thinking of a guy who was a great, not a good, but a great teammate, and a guy who had an excellent NFL career.
Well, unlike Eli Manning, the career will continue for Phillip Rivers, so the 5-year clock doesn't even start yet, assuming he finds a landing spot. And Peter, for me, I think it became clear the Chargers were going to move on after that back-to-back primetime games, culminating in the Mexico City loss to the Chiefs, where he had 7 interceptions in 2 games that we all saw. It's one thing to quietly have 7 interceptions on a Sunday afternoon in a regional broadcast. It's quite another to have back-to-back games, primetime, national television, where you total 7 interceptions in those 2 games. You throw in the bad record this year for the Chargers, and going into the new stadium with the inability to resonate in L.A., they've got to make themselves into an L.A. team, and Phillip Rivers was not going to do that. It was time for the Chargers to move on. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here. I still think they're going to end up with Cam Newton. For the Chargers, and we're going to have a draft coming up in an hour and a half of his best landing spots, he's going somewhere, and he told our friend Sam Farmer of the LA Times on Monday, I can say for certain that I'm playing. It's a 2-year maximum. Whoever the suitors are, I think that would be their hope as well, because you never know how it goes. Shoot, if we stink it up after 1 year, I'm probably done. If we play really good, they'll probably want to go again. So he's looking for a place where he can get up to 2 years, no more than 2 years, basically 1 year with an option for a second year. He's going to want to play, Peter. And here's the thing. He's not going to want to be the guy who is the starter in the middle of March and then late April the team that he signed with drafts a guy in round 1, and it's just a question of when he's going to supplant Phillip Rivers. And I think the contract he signs will tell us, him, and everyone else that he's the guy for 2020, period. That there's not going to be some rookie that takes over in October or November or December. And that's where, it's not about the money, but it's about the money, because the financial commitment tells everyone he's our guy, period, for all of this season. And I think he's not going to want to play unless he gets that kind of a commitment.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real tricky call for some team, Mike, because, we can round up the usual suspects right now. We can say that, okay, if nobody gives him a starting job, flat out, absolutely, then where would he go? The first 2 teams on my list in that case would be Indianapolis and Chicago. And then if you say after that, okay, which are the places that are most likely to give him the opportunity to start, 70, 80% once opening day rolls around? I would say Tampa, depending on Jameis Winston. I would say Carolina, depending on Cam Newton. And I would say New England, depending on Tom Brady. But all of those things, it's just, what we're all doing? We're all buying lottery tickets, because right now there are 10 quarterback situations in the NFL. I was writing them down last night. There's 10 quarterback situations in the NFL that are an absolute total mystery. If number 10 on my list was Chicago, and everyone in Chicago would say, oh, no, that's Trubisky's job for at least one more year. Is it? I mean, I'm sure it is on opening day, but is it going to be Trubisky's solid job if he continues to stink it up in 2020?
And here's the challenge. And Sims and I have been talking about this, Peter. It's a game of musical chairs that is coming up. We just don't know whether there's more butts than seats or more seats than butts, right? We don't know that when the music stops, it's going to be quarterbacks looking around saying, where's my job? Or it's going to be teams looking around saying, where's my quarterback? And for Phillip Rivers, it could be the smartest play for him is to wait until after the draft, because there's a chance after the draft, there's going to be a team that says, holy crap, we didn't get a starter in free agency. We didn't get a starter in the draft. We need somebody for 2020. We need him now. Hey, Phillip Rivers, come save us. He could get more money, and he could get that clear path to being the guy. And, Peter, there's a philosophical question that is embedded in all of this that Phillip Rivers is going to have to resolve. Is he willing to be basically a Ryan Tannehill, where you show up as the number 2 and you just kind of hope that the starter either stinks or gets hurt and you get a chance to play? I think, and based upon stuff Sims heard about the Chargers maybe sniffing around a Marcus Mariota in 2015 or a Deshaun Watson in 2017, and the reaction from Phillip Rivers when those possibilities were broached with him, I don't think he's going to want to go anywhere where he's not the number 1 guy for the full season. And if that's the case, it very well could be that he ends up retiring, or at a minimum, waiting for someone to say, Phillip, we need you. You're our guy. You're not going to be holding a clipboard. You're not going to be waiting for someone to get injured or stink. You're our guy from the moment you sign a contract. I think that's what he wants. If he doesn't get that, I don't think he's going to play.
Well, that's a good question, Mike. If I were him, I would just look at history and the history of quarterback situations where the number 1 guy is shaky. And again, I'll talk about Jacoby Brissett in Indianapolis and Mitchell Trubisky in Chicago. There's all kinds of strange quarterback situations because, look, what is the guarantee, let's say, for instance, in Pittsburgh, that Ben Roethlisberger can stay healthy? Yes, as of this morning, he's the last person standing with his original team from the 2004 draft, among the quarterbacks. I get that, but is he going to last the full season? Are the Carolina Panthers legitimately interested in erasing, in starting over in their quarterback situation and not paying Cam Newton when they have no idea what Cam Newton is right now? There are so many questions about this. But, Mike, I would agree with you. There's only a couple of places where teams might jump out before the draft and say, Philip, we want you. You know, like Bruce Arians. Let's just talk about Bruce Arians for a second. If Jameis Winston, as I've said before, if he overplays his hand financially in this thing, if he's not basically fairly reasonable about the amount of money he wants after a 30 interception season, then I think Bruce Arians would very likely just say, hey, look, let's just go our separate ways. And if that happens, if it happens, and these are all my guesses, I'm just reading the tea leaves knowing Bruce Arians, and especially, Mike, how Bruce Arians changed in his attitude on Jameis Winston in the last couple of weeks of the season. You know, first 14 weeks or whatever, he's very supportive. Jameis is our guy. Oh, that was a fluke interception. You didn't hear that the last 2 weeks of the season. But anyway, I'm only making that point to say that could I imagine if Jameis Winston and the Bucs come to loggerheads, you know, say a week before free agency begins? I wouldn't be surprised if they go their separate ways. And then that is a place, a coach who loves a veteran quarterback, just like Bill Belichick, a coach who loves veterans who've got a year or two left. You know, those are the kind of places that I could see if he signs before, you know, the draft or before the draft and free agency. Those are the logical places.
And the Buccaneers fascinate me, Peter, because I can't tell whether or not Bruce Arians really means the things he's saying or whether this is part of an effort to soften up Jameis Winston's expectations financially. And just the flirtation with a guy like Phillip Rivers, is that your leverage play to get Winston to take less? Because if you fill his spot with someone else, where's he going to go? Who's going to want Jameis Winston? And I'm kind of rooting now for Phillip Rivers to Tampa simply for the post-game press conferences, because it would go from Gomer Pyle with shucks and golly and darn to Lenny Bruce with every F word and curse word and profanity when Arians shows up. So I love the contrast potentially in Tampa Bay from Phillip Rivers to Bruce Arians. But it's not going to be easy for Phillip Rivers. And, you know, the Chargers have done this guy a favor by not playing games with him. I thought maybe a week or two ago when Jay Glazer initially said that the Chargers are moving on from Phillip Rivers, and then Ian Rappaport tried this whole, well, the Chargers are going to explore their options and maybe they'll apply the franchise tag. I thought the Chargers would actually consider a tag and trade. And maybe they've realized over the last couple of weeks it's not going to work because nobody is going to take on $27 million plus for 1 year for Phillip Rivers. And if that's what they've learned over the last 2 weeks, that they've abandoned that strategy and that approach, that doesn't bode well for teams lining up out the door for Phillip Rivers. I think if Tom Brady's in play, they're going to be lining up for Tom Brady. Phillip Rivers is in play, and I'm not so sure they're going to be lining up. And that gets me back to the point that I made. If he's not given that, you're our guy, period, unequivocally, unconditionally, maybe his best play is to wait. And maybe the wait goes beyond the draft, Peter. Maybe he waits for Ben Roethlisberger to get injured again. Maybe he's the guy who's going to ride in on a white horse and save someone in September or October.
Look, there's something to be said for Phillip Rivers waiting until August 28th when some quarterback goes down with a 8-week injury or whatever. Who knows? But the one thing I really agree with you on is that this is going to be harder maybe than Phillip Rivers thinks at this moment. I'll say one other thing about Tampa Bay. I don't think this is a case of Bruce Arians or the general manager, Jason Light, playing games, or the Glazers playing games. And look, Mike, I've got to tell you, this is my reading of the tea leaves. I've not talked to Arians or Jason Light about this, so let's make that very clear. But when I look at this, any logical thinking person is going to look at the Tampa Bay Bucs quarterback situation and at a quarterback, Jameis Winston, who has led the NFL in interceptions since 2015, since 2016, since 2017, since 2018, and in 2019. Every one of those time periods, Jameis Winston has thrown more interceptions than anybody in football. So if you're the Bucs, this isn't about, whoa, let's try to slow play this so that he'll take less money. It's not like you're negotiating with Patrick Mahomes here, where you're going to have to break the bank. If I'm the Bucs, and if Jameis Winston isn't willing to take some, what I would say, significant restrictors in that contract, I'm shaking hands and saying good luck.
That's not going to be easy to do, though. 5,108 passing yards, 8th all-time single season, and the only guys who have had more production from a yardage standpoint than him are all current or future Hall of Famers. That is going to be
let me ask you this question, Mike.
We got to take a break. We got to put a pin in it.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.